Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 best beginner arc tames, and that means just if you're new to the game, not if you're early on in the game. In at number 10 I've decided to put the Carno, as I find this is really an effective and useful creature to have in your roster. It is just so nice and very easy to tame. Yes, you could say the Aloe is a great one as well, and I'll give it here as a spot on here, as an honorable mention. But I find the Carno is just the better creature for me, but I'll let you decide that for yourself. What is the better creature for you in terms of ease of taming and just the overall size of the creature and mobility and damage and health, and all of those factors really do play in. And for me, the Carno is always the creature which I'll go for. Feel free to disagree in the comments down below. I do not mind if your opinion is different to mine. But for me, again, the Carno is just the one for me. Compared to the Aloe, I vastly prefer the smaller size, and I like just having a smaller carnivore. I also find they are easier to tame as well, just by a little bit, because trapping them is easier considering the Aloe usually does spawn in a pack. Although in ASA that's less apparent because baby versions of the creatures can spawn, and it's pretty much the same in terms of difficulty. The only real difference is the Carno is still slightly easier, as killing a Carno is a little bit easier than killing an Aloe, especially if there's some others about as well. But you know, there might be some other Carnos about in this instance too. The Carno also does the bleed ability, and I like the amount of mobility it has. I can feel reasonably stealthy and quite good with myself while traveling around and demolishing loads of creatures around me with this thing, and that is why I really like it as a beginner arc tame. Next up, we've got the UT, and although you might not be thinking about bosses quite yet, I find this is a really nice one if you are new to the game, as yes, maybe a Rex is something which you go for, and a Rex is something which you definitely can, but I find the UT in most places is generally just a better carnivore to use around the map. The Spino is a great option as well, but I find the UT is the easiest option to tame out of those three, and you still got that courage roar and the fear roar, tons of mobility and a lot of damage dealing. They are just really great carnivores to run around the map with and use all across Arc. They are very sufficient for all of your big carnivore needs. Their stamina is good, their health is good, their weight is good, their damage is good, and obviously they've got those abilities as well. So, you know, they're even nicer to use, and they're better at swimming than the Rex. I know you're probably not going to be using these things as underwater carnivore, but I find they really are not the worst for that job, and if you need to cross some sections of water, you won't find it too difficult to do that with the UT. Next up, we've got the Stego. You can either really choose between this, the Trike, and maybe the Parasaur, possibly a Diplo or a Bronto as well, although this is my preferable one. Also, sorry about all the flickering in this B-roll. I should probably re-record it when ASA sort of fixes itself up a little bit, because yeah, it wasn't doing the best when I was recording this, and shadow flickering was very commonplace in the game. It still really is on the island. Not really on Scorch, because there's a lot less trees about and generally a lot less shadows about, or maybe the issue's just fixed really on that map. The Stego obviously has gone through some TLC for release, and since it's been released, in the early stages of the game, and it makes it even better, because if you're a PvP arc player, then even if you're new to the game, you could possibly do some lower level raiding with one of these creatures. You can get into the high end ones as well, but turret soaking with this thing on maybe a kind of mid-tier base is going to be something which you can do solo with one of these creatures, obviously by using the, I think, hardened plate is the one for turret soaking. The heavy plate is good for gathering wood, and the sharpened plate will gather you all your berries and things like that, which is what I would use it for from a PvE perspective, and obviously that's what I mainly use it for as a PvE player. Then at number 7, I've decided to put the Pteranodon, as well, yes, they're going to be really great viewers to begin a tame. I find there's some better ones out there. You may have put this higher, and that is totally acceptable, but this really, for me, deserves to be in the number 7 spot. No higher or no lower. It is a very easy fly to tame, probably the easiest kind of really good traveling mount out there to tame, just apart from one creature, which has actually made it right the way into the #1 spot because I find it's better and it's even easier to tame than this thing. The only real difficulty is the map that it spawns on, but still, as a beginner Arc player, you might have access to those maps and might not, and you can differ this list depending on what maps you have. But I am contributing all maps into this, but mainly kind of focusing on maps like the island and those 3 DLCs, because, you know, in theory, most people are just going to have a lot more playtime on those, and they're going to be playing those first, or just generally playing those because they don't have the other maps. Then the real difficulty for this is the saddle. The chitin or keratin can be a little bit difficult to get. I find go with chitin, it tends to be easier. Just kill any kind of insects that you can find around, the small ones like the Titanomira and the Meganeura, and you'll have a good time with getting that chitin. You can obviously get it through keratin as well from the carb enemies, which are the turtles you'll find on the beaches, but go through insects because you'll get it done a lot faster, and obviously they take a lot less time to kill. I wasn't really quite that knowledgeable back in like 2015, 2016, but at least I do know that now. Obviously the Pteranodon is very easy to tame. Bowler it, and you'd use a club or some tranks. Club if it's a low level, tranks if it is a higher one, and then saddle it up and you get yourself a fast, agile flyer, which can be used for both PvE and PvP scenarios. The Thler maybe you wouldn't think of as a beginner tame, but trust me, if you take your precautions properly, you can get this creature tamed properly, well, and efficiently. If you have yourself access to the Thler saddle, which I think is in the level 40 or 50 range, as far as I'm concerned, you can obviously check that as well. Then this creature is really going to be just great for you to have, as the trap can be very simply made with some wood and then simply trank it out when it's in the trap. Obviously look for one on the rubber trees. You'll probably want yourself a Pteranodon as well, or just a flyer to get around. You can do it on foot with some other creatures, but I find a Pteranodon is quite an easy and effective creature to use to tame one. Then once you've got it into said trap, then trank it out. Obviously make sure you've got some armor on too, at least chitin really, because you don't want to be killing yourself in a scenario like this. Put some sleeping bags down if you're not sure if you will survive, because they're going to come in real handy. So you don't have to go back all the way to your base, and you might not have another Pteranodon lying around, so it's going to be a long while until you get back to the redwoods, and that Pteranodon might die as well because you can't get back to it in time. But then once you've tamed one, you've got yourself one of the best, if not the best creature really on the island, just for everything in general. Obviously it's no berry gatherer, but it still can deal the bleed ability, and it can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. It is extremely mobile and generally an all-round great caving and carnivore to have in your roster. It is an amazing creature, and I really do like people that use a creature like this, and I like using a creature like this. It really is a good one, which actually, if you prepare for it, beginners can actually do it with relative ease. In number 5, we have got ourselves the Bionics, and this is going to be the best caving creature out there for you. Yes, I said the Thler was good. The Saber can also do some stuff as well, but the Barry is really going to be the one you're going to look out for when it comes to caving. Again, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, get one of these things, they'll be great for caving. They have the health, stamina, and agility to get through those things, and on top of that as well, they are the right size to fit into all of them, really, apart from the artifact of the Skylord Cave. Don't even try bringing any creature into that. You're going to have to do that one on foot. They also just are great creatures for general mobility around the map as well. They can get a lot done when it comes to travel. Not quite as much as the Thler, but they can jump around, and they are really good swimmers, which the Thler really can't justify. Also, I do find they're a little bit easier to tame too. Their special ability while underwater is the fact that they can do a spin attack, stunning creatures up to the size of a Megalodon, and that makes them really good for the underwater caves as well, which again, you may not be thinking about. Don't know why I said it twice, but either way, yeah, you might not be thinking about that yet, but trust me, that time will come at some point, and it's just better to prepare first, and you can still use these things for a great traveling mount and combat creature. Next up, I've decided to put the crystal wyverns on the list, and yes, the wyvern does deserve some attention and a lot of respect, but if you do have crystal owls, which is a free DLC, obviously Raasclark is as well, so you can have access to the wyverns for free, then hop on crystal owls and get yourself some crystal wyverns. You do need to be level 60, so get yourself a note run done. If you don't know how to do that, look up, there'll be some simple tutorials online for note runs that you can do on crystal owls. Trust me, it will be easy, you'll have no issues doing that whatsoever. Then get yourself some Caros and probably a sufficient trap to trap one of these wyverns. Then obviously you're going to knock it out and get that primal crystal. Then find a crystal wyvern which you'll find to be the most desirable for you. For my preference, it is blood crystal wyverns, but you might like the emerald crystal wyverns or the tropical crystal wyverns more. Just pick whichever one is most appealing to you. Then there's a specific spot you can go on its back, kind of where you would ride it, and get onto that spot of it, and then just press E and it's going to start passive taming, and you can just stay on that spot, and then every time it tells you to feed it, keep pressing E, and then eventually you'll tame this thing. Make sure you have enough primal crystal though, because that can be a little bit of a difficulty. Always use the app Dodo Dex if you're unsure of what you're going to need for taming. It's not going to be the most accurate thing in the world, but it will give you quite a good assumption for what you can expect. So overestimate that a little bit and then you should be fine. But yes, they're the wyverns, but just so much easier to tame, and I find their elemental abilities are even better, and they're not really difficult to tame. In number 3, I've decided to put the Bionics. Again, you might not think of this as a tame that you can get quite early on as a beginner, but still these things are really easy. Go onto Valguero if you haven't already and get some of these things spawn in the Chocolate biome. I'm not actually sure what spawn point it is, but it's the biome that looks like this. I'm pretty sure it's quite central. It's sort of near the big lake that's in the middle of the map. Then you're going to want to find yourself some Bionics nests. Kind of make sure you have a grappling hook, or actually you can just kamikaze, go in and then try and run out, and then wherever you die, then just pick up your body from there and get out and go to your base. Then just put some torches around this egg and raise this thing, and then obviously have sufficient meat at the time to bring this thing up. They really aren't very difficult. You don't have to worry about imprint and all of that yet. They're not going to be used for boss fighting when you're first getting them. Once you've got that saddle though, you can really use these things as great carnivores to travel around the map with, and once you've got a nice breeding pair, you don't have to worry about taming them this way anymore. And then obviously you can worry about imprints and all of that when you start getting these creatures ready for doing your boss fights, as they'll have a better chance if obviously they've been fully imprinted, and it's just going to help their stats all round. They also take no fall damage, which is just great for their traveling, and like the Thler, they can scale any kind of wall or vertical surface. They really are good tames for traveling, and I love them for this use. And considering how easy they are to tame, for all you beginners out there, really go on Valguero and tame one of these things, because you will definitely not regret it. And you can always just transfer it onto whatever map maybe you're trying on a little bit more, because Valguero might not be your main map at your time. In number 2, I've decided to put the Argentavis, as I find this is just generally a really great creature all round. It has a variety of abilities, and generally it is one which you can find abundantly across the island's mountains, and it is just going to be a go-to. You may not consider it as a beginner tame again for the saddle level, which I think is 61, something around that, but trust me, with note runners you can get there pretty quickly, and you can still be a beginner to the game and get into the level 60s. Then once you've got one, which can be done with a very simple trap, I advise you to use a trap, and then you lure it in, and then you obviously close the trap off. Trank this thing out, you can just use a crossbow. You don't really need to worry about the long necks for even things like that. You don't really need to worry about the long neck for most things, where you can still use trank arrows right into the late stages of the game, but it's advisable, and you can even get into shocking tranks too, but trank arrows will do just fine for a tame like this. And then you've got weight reduction, things like metal, crystal, and obsidian. They can carry all kinds of creatures, as well as that their smithy acts as saddle, making them really great for traveling to places where you're going caving. Just carry your Bionics in the claws of the RG, take it to wherever you need to go for whatever cave you're doing, and then when you get out, if those ultra fluids have damaged any of your armor, then you can simply just repair it in the RG. Also, if your RG is low in health, you can always eat something and not in your inventory explicitly, but just eat a dead creature, or just kill a creature and eat it once it's dead, and then you can get yourself a nice regen buff, and it will definitely come in handy. And at number 1, I'm deciding to put the Maywing, as I find, considering its saddle is unlocked at level 18, it is absolutely insane how good this is as a glider. And yes, you may not have Gen 2 at your disposal, and that is perfectly okay. You can always moderate the list and get something like the RG or the Crystal Wyvern or the Deinonychus for all of those needs, but I just find they are just so good at gliding, I do have to warrant putting them in at the number 1 spot. They are the best travel mounts in the game in my opinion, and they're so easy to tame. A few signposts, you just trap them in a position, and then boom, like that, just give them a couple of train carriers. The saddle again is unlocked at level 18 really early on, and you can have yourself this amazing creature, which is, in my opinion, again, the best gliding creature in the game. They also are really good swimmers as well, which you might not expect out of these things, but when you could kind of think of them as a platypus, it sort of makes sense. They also do act as a portable breeding trough as well, so maybe if your Deinonychus needs feeding early on, you can get yourself that Maywing to feed it. Obviously you can just put meat in its inventory, but you know, I'm fleshing it out a little bit. And on top of that, they can gather berries too, like the Stego, but they've just got so many other nice attributes that I really do have to put them in at this spot. The best bang for your buck Tames. In at number 10, I've decided to put the Ther, as I find this is just generally a really nice art creature to have, and being quite a simple knockout tame and relatively easy to trap with no issues whatsoever, and with obviously basically just one step in the tame method, which is knock it out. You could say 2 if you say feed it, but on top of that, it really is nothing else, and it is just such a versatile creature. It is a great one for doing the dragon boss fight on the island, obviously, as it is particularly harsh to carnivores, and this being a herbivore which also deals loads and loads of damage, it does work very effectively in that given scenario. And on top of that, my favourite attribute about this creature is its great fibre gathering. Often you can find loads of herbivores out there that will gather berries for days, but no fibre. Obviously the moss chops does exist as well. Depends if you get lucky, if you will tame one of those. Another great suggestion, although maybe not the bang for your buck tame, considering that they can be a little bit of a pain to tame if you don't find the right ones. And, you know, especially if you're playing unofficial, it can be pretty frustrating sometimes, but they're great fibre gatherers too. Just, I really like the way the Ther does it, and the Ther, in my eyes, is quite easy to tame. Yes, you do have to be level 69.
Nice.
To get it, but that really isn't that bad. Continuing on, I've decided to put the Aloe on this list, and I find loads of people really do like this one, and there might be a bit of a disagreement with what comes later on the list, but that is just my personal preference. We'll get to it when we get to it. I want to talk about the Aloe. This is a very nice, relatively easy to find carnivore. It isn't all too rare, because that does play into the factor. By bang for your buck, I basically mean tames which are really great but easy to tame. I felt that was a bit of a long-winded title, so I decided to change it for the purpose of the video, and I think it works better. Either way, they're not the hardest to find. Just search on any mountainous region really on the island. Ridiculously easy to find in the Highlands biome on Raasclark, though you should have no issues whatsoever. They'll usually be in packs of 3, and the highest level will be determined by the one which has the alpha pack buff, and that's probably the one which you're going to want to tame, or you can just tame all 3 as long as the other 2 aren't really low levels as well, and then you can instantly have yourself a pack of aloes. Sometimes, no matter the level, it is still worth it just to get yourself a pack of aloes to get that pack buff, as yes, you do need 3 to make a pack of aloes, and I'm pretty sure in Ark a pack of anything. And once you've got it, it is a very powerful, nice, easy to use carnivore that is versatile, very mobile, very efficient to use. I might have already said that, and they do a heck of a lot of damage, and the bleed ability as well. Sadly, that doesn't affect bosses in this case, but still, you know, there's another creature on this list which does that exact thing, and it's there for said reason. They still have the bleed ability though for all other creatures, and are great boss fighting ones because of their reasonably high health, quite nice mobility, and very high damage, especially considering their size and ease of taming. So the Spinosaurus, an all-time favourite of mine, and I was contemplating to put the Rex here instead. I guess there's a brief honourable mention for it. but I always did prefer this creature, and I still do prefer it, and I use it in pretty much any scenario where you might want to use a Rex instead, which is boss fighting scenarios. I just love this creature for them. They are just so much more mobile than a Rex, and they tend to do a little bit more damage than a Rex as well, and once I bred them up a little bit and got some health mutations, their health is pretty much incomparable. Yes, you could probably get some higher health on a Rex, but still, that health is easily high enough for pretty much any boss fight in the game, apart from obviously all of the bosses on Extinction. Just use a Stego for the Forest Titan, which I've never actually done before, but apparently the TLC ability it got, the Impaling, is absolutely OP. Whoever said that in the comments, thanks for the tip. The next time I do the Forest Titan, I will definitely use said method, and obviously you use the Quetzal for the Desert Titan as well, and you could use Gigas and Carnodonsauruses for the Ice Titan, possibly not, but the Ice Titan I've usually used something like a mech or something around those things. Either way, talking about the Spino again and not some other creatures that I like to use or have been suggested for me to use on Extinction bosses. The Spino is that creature, incredibly mobile, has a TLC as well, it's got the hydration buff, makes it pretty great for the Moda. It also can turn 360 on the spot, deals a heck of a lot of damage, like I've said, more than the Rex in the cases that I've seen, and they're not too difficult to tame. Yes, a Rex is easier, but I'm thinking you're getting a lot more value with this creature than a Rex, at least in my opinion. Also makes some quite great underwater caving creatures as well, if that's something you want to consider, because on the islands, all the underwater caves are pretty massive, so they really are a bang for your buck tame, in my opinion. And at number 7, I've decided to put the Carno, and this is where some of the dispute may happen of like, why am I putting the Carno above the Aloe? Well, in my opinion, the Carno is much easier to tame. On ASA, that makes little difference because of the baby taming methods, I know, but you know, killing a Carno is still a lot easier than killing an Aloe, and I find they are very effective creatures. This is a lot of nostalgia playing in, of course, but I do have to factor in my opinions to this list, and the Carno is just an opinion of which I have, which I find is just so strong for me that I simply have to put this creature on the list. And I do recommend, like, just as quite a first carnival for PvE players. For PvP players, I've honestly got no idea, and I admit that I have no idea what's going on with PvP Arc, but for PvE Arc, I would say that the Carno is quite a nice creature to have. You can chill around on it, you can definitely get some work done with killing some creatures, harvesting all kinds of meat and hides, and in the early game it really is effective, and you can even do some bosses with it as well if you want to. They do the bleed ability, not to bosses of course, but to everything else that you'll find on the way, and they're pretty mobile, pretty fast, and I really do like their size, similar to the Megalosaurus as well, which is quite a nice creature. The only reason why I didn't put it on this list is they do spawn in caves, and that is a little bit too much for me to put them on this list, but I guess maybe in like spot 11 or something around that, because I really do like those creatures, and they also are a bit rare on the island as well, which is why I refrained from it. But yeah, Carno, really love this thing. So the Thler, one of those creatures where you really can't go across most maps without this thing if it does spawn on the map, and obviously you've got these Shadow Main as well, but their taming method is way too difficult for me to even consider putting them on the list, and I know their value is very high, but so is the demand for the taming method, so they simply can't be put on this list. But let's stop talking about these Shadow Main, shall we, and let's just stop me being off topic altogether and just get back to talking about the Thler. These things that spawn in the Redwoods biome on the island, they're relatively abundant, and a high level one isn't all too hard to find, and at least I don't struggle with it. Just look on the trees, obviously be careful. I'll probably go in on an RG or something like that, fly through, just scope the area, use a spyglass, and find a Thler of a level which I find to be quite reasonable. I'm usually, if I'm thinking level 150 being the max, then I would go for anything really over a 125, around that kind of thing. But obviously for me, I use, well, it's probably not obvious actually, but I use 50 times difficulty, so that means my creatures are level 1500. Just the thing I've been doing, so when I'm looking for Thlers, I'll be looking for ones which are over level 1250. I usually go for 1400s and ones like that, because they tend to be more desirable to me. Either way, let's stop with the talk of that. I feel like I'm getting really off topic on this one. But anyway, the Thler does the bleed ability, which is quite nice. Sadly, they can't go into bosses because of their wall climbing abilities, but they are very agile, very mobile, versatile creatures. They can climb any kind of wall or vertical surface. Really does make them effective mounts, and that is why I decided to put them on this list, as they are a very basic knockout tame. At number 5, we have got the Crystal Wyvern, and come on, it is very deserving of the list, at least in my opinion. Some of you may be like, well, the Wyvern just has to be better, doesn't it? The normal Wyvern, because it's got a harder taming method, and you know those Wyverns must just be better generally, and I find that is a common misconception, at least from what I've heard. And the Crystal Wyvern is one creature which I find is really disrespected. It comes on a literal free DLC, and they're ridiculously easy to tame and ridiculously versatile. You really should be using these things, at least obviously in my opinion. Obviously do consider that through this, but I would recommend getting the Blood Crystal Wyvern. I just like that elemental ability the most, but the Emerald Crystal Wyvern is quite a good suggestion as well. The Tropical Crystal Wyvern maybe not quite as much, but there is still value in this thing as just a general travelling mount. They also need no saddle whatsoever. Sadly, no natural armour like the Shadow Mane, but no Wyvern has armor. I think there is some mods out there, or some item that's maybe vanilla. There's like a rock sort of thing that you can put in a thing, and then it gives you like 5 armor or something. Either way, it's very minute if there is on an official, but that probably is like an S+ mod thing. I play with loads of mods these days, so I can't really keep track of what's vanilla and what's not. But yes, their tame method is very simple. Haven't actually talked about it yet, but I'll talk about it very briefly. It's passive tame. You've got to be level 60, knock out one of these things to get the prime crystal, and then again, passive tame, you've got to feed those things. But then once you've done it, you got yourself a Wyvern for a much cheaper tame method and with better abilities. The Argy, what a creature, really. It cannot be disrespected for all of its attributes, and it has been here for a long while, and it has kept us satisfied, at least me satisfied, for an awful long while. And I love these creatures, and with a very simple trap and some trank arrows, you're going to have no issue with taming these things whatsoever. Maybe it can be a little bit awkward to get them into a trap, especially on ASA, but I find it really isn't too much of an issue, and I can do it with relative ease and no difficulty. I did a little bit in the beginning when I started using traps to tame things, which was actually way too recently, and I think that was about 3 or 4 years ago. Previously to that, I would just, or prior to that I should say, I just knock these things out just in the open air and like chase them around on a griffin whenever those came out, or just, you know, hoped and waited. But the trap method is definitely a lot more efficient, a lot better obviously, and with those, the Argy just being such a great creature, it does deserve the list. Of course, it has a portable smithy as a saddle. Great if you're doing caving, you don't want to go back all the way to your base, just have some smelted metal in its inventory, and then boom, you can repair it with your metal items. You can carry a wealth of creatures as well. They've got weight reduction, things like metal, crystal and obsidian, so if you pair it with an Anki and a Dodic, or either or really, because you can't carry both at the same time, you can get yourself loads of metal, crystal, stone and obsidian, and even more flint and wood and thatch and all of that. They also do have a nice regen buff as well. If you kill something and eats their dead body, it will come in a lot more handy than you might expect. At number 3, we have got the Bionics, and I really do love this creature. It is just so deserving of this spot in my opinion. It is the ideal caving creature for me, and with a simple knockout tame like this, it really does deserve to be on the bang for your buck arc tames. It is the only real downside, I should say, to its tame method is the fact that it spawns in the swamp biome, and it can be particularly hostile, especially with Rhinognathers and all of those things. And obviously you do need fish to tame this thing, but I don't find that is too much of an issue, as coelacanths are very abundant from all of my exploration of the art map. You really shouldn't worry about that too much. And then once you've tamed one, you've got yourself an extremely agile, mobile tame, which is capable of just an awful lot. It is the best caving creature, like I've said. Yes, you can say the Shadow Mane is great as well, but the fact that this is so much easier to tame and a lot more accessible to people considering the map that it spawns on, it really just takes the crown all the time, and it still does not fail in the water. The Shadow Mane is a great underwater creature as well, but the Bionics definitely can do it as well. Obviously it's a bit of a pescivore in a way. It eats fish. You would expect it to swim very well, and it can stun creatures up the size of a Megalodon with its second attack. Very nice, neat creature. At number 2, we have got the Deinonychus, and you might be saying, well, the Deinonychus is much harder to tame, and it's not just a simple knockout one. Well, yes, but I find if you have yourself a grappling hook at hand or some kind of basic flyer, then this one really isn't either. Essentially, go to the Chalk Cliffs on Vaguero, a free DLC, so very accessible to everyone apart from, I think, Switch and mobile players at the moment. Not sure with the DLC situation for Switch players at the moment. Do you have Vaguero or not? Comment that down below, but mobile players, of course, won't, you know, what mobile be like. Hopefully that gets revamped for all of those people waiting on it. But yes, then once you've done that, you're going to want to raise that egg, and it can be done with just some torches to start off with. Unofficial, yes, it will be a pain because it will take a lot longer, but I find if you're playing on single player, this really isn't too bad of a tame. And your first one, you don't need to worry about imprints and all of that. You could just get one, and you can still reap a lot of the benefits because you're probably not going to be doing bosses when you're like level 40, level 50. It is a little bit later on, but if you get that bit of a grind on in the early stages on Vaguero, you can get these things pretty quickly within 5 hours, even if you're like really going for it. And if you're really going for it, you could probably get it in less than 2 hours, depending on what your rates are for your raising, because I am factoring all of that into the time as well. Once you've tamed one, they can deal bleed damage to bosses, which is just so OP. They're great traveling mounts. They can scale any kind of wall, vertical cliff. They take no fall damage. They have the pack buff, and in my opinion, they're not too difficult to tame. Just takes a little bit of effort, but then apart from that, you're going to get yourself the best bang for your buck, apart from the creature which is next on the list. And at number 1, we have got the Maywing. Considering that their saddle is unlocked at level 18 and they can be tamed with some trank arrows and just a couple of signs to trap them in, then these do have to really top the list. They are the best traveling mounts out there, hands down. Nothing can beat them. They are fast, agile gliders, yes, not flyers, but still, actually, with the Maywing, if you get the technique right, you don't need an awful lot of elevation, if any really, to keep them gliding over those flatter plains. I have got it in a bit more of a higher gradient area just for the purpose of the B-Rock. Kind of makes it look a little bit more impressive with everything kind of gliding around, but the fact they're unlocked at level 18 in terms of their saddle level, it is absolutely insane. And you'll find with Gen 2 a lot of creatures are very OP, and this is actually, I'm pretty sure, the only Gen 2 creature on the list, but it really is the best bang for your buck tame. Just so easy and so effective. The best traveling mount out there, like I've said. They also do act as a portable feeding trough, so for you people that do loads of breeding out there, these are going to come in real handy. The Gigantoraptor will help out as well, but maybe not quite as much as the Maywing, especially considering how much easier the Maywing is to tame. I know I keep going on about it, but it really is so easy. And they can also glide across the top of the water, not the worst swimmers in the world, and gather berries too. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all have enjoyed this one. As always, comment down below what is your best bang for your buck tame, and if you didn't agree with this list, then I would like you to put your 10 down below in the comments. I'll see you all later.